It's 6:30. We don't have representative of the applicant here, but I think we should probably just go ahead and get started if that's all right with everybody. So I'll call this meeting to order for the regular meeting of the Planning Commission on May 16th, 2024. The first order of business is to the Pledge of Allegiance. You stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Does everybody have the agenda? Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The minutes, the agenda is approved. The next order of business is approval of the minutes for the March 14th regular meeting. If I've reviewed them, they look fine to me. Do I have a motion for, unless there's discussion on them, do I have a motion for
No.
approval?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. The approval of the minutes has passed. We do have a public hearing tonight. Arnie, you're here to for that. Great. And the new business. Well, we have only one public hearing tonight, so let's get started. I'm going to call the public hearing to order at this time. This is for the recommendation on an ordinance for a variance to chapter 14, which is not the chapter we usually deal with, but it's chapter 14, article 6, section 5A, to reduce the stream buffer and impervious surface setback requirements to allow construction of a wellness center in Serenbe. I'm going to call for public comments at this time, but I'll read the procedures. We're going to allow each side an equal opportunity to the floor. Does she need to sign a comment card?
It might be helpful.
Yeah.
Applicant.
Applicant?
I mean, yes, it's caused, not for y'all, but it's caused a couple issues in the past when the applicant hasn't put one out.
Right.
At the council meetings, they've been skipped. So that would be.
And we might just miss you on this one, right?
I'll send your papers. Okay, there you go.
I am going to need to read the instructions, the rules. If you desire to speak in support of or in opposition to an item, you must fill out a public comment card and turn it into the city clerk. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk. All speakers should identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. In this case, each side will have 10 minutes to present their case, and each speaker will have be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The applicant may take as much of the allotted time for those supporting the issue as he or she may want. And we can extend the allotted time for an equal amount to both sides as needed and as deemed appropriate by the Planning Commission. All of those speaking in support of the item will speak first. The applicant may choose to save some of the allotted time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. Those opposing the issue will speak next. If any time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut the final remarks made by the applicant. Do we have any written comments? Okay, well, I will skip that portion of regarding written comments since it's not applicable tonight. Following the presentation by the applicant, those speaking in support of the application and those opposing the application, the city staff will present their position. The city clerk will keep track of time and will inform you when your allotted time has expired. During the public hearing, members of the Planning Commission shall listen to the presentation made by each speaker. No action on their part is in order until the chair declares the public hearing complete. Following public comment, the chair will close the public comment portion of the hearing and with respect to this proposal and seek discussion and our motion to act upon the proposal. So let's go ahead and start with with those in favor and the applicant, if you would like to.
Yes, I am in favor. For a little bit of clarity, in case it's not, I'm sorry. We're the only people.
You can relax and sit down.
That's what, I'm good.
You want to take the mic? Is there anybody to the recording? Yeah, this is for the recording. You can move around.
Okay, but move around, but be recorded. Okay. And in case it's not clear in the packet,
We are not moving into the stream buffer with any structures. The stream buffer variance is for this access road that was specifically asked for by the city that we're happy to install, mostly about like for public life, fire truck, et cetera, safety. I'm gonna move over to the map to point out what it is. But there's not a house. There's not, it's about this access road. It's about this access road going into the stream buffer, not any of the structures. So our original plan didn't have that access road and we weren't in the stream buffer. And so this access road for life safety, et cetera, was a request of the city's team. And so therefore is requiring us to ask for that stream buffer for that path only road.
Thank you. Mike, would you please make the recommendation for the city and
Sure,
for your presentation on this?
sure, happy to. I'll say, I wasn't aware of the sequence of events of the design and then the addition, although I do know that the representative of the fire department did meet them out on site and was involved in getting that road in the way it was. I wasn't aware they had a design without it or before that, so that's also interesting to know. Yeah, so the staff finds that the proposed encroachments are minimal, will mostly be revegetated anyway. And there's additional mitigation of roughly 5 times the area proposed additional stream buffer that's offered by the applicant. So staff recommends approval of the variance.
Thank you. We'll close the public comment portion of the hearing, but we're going to continue with discussion at this point. Yes, in just a second, just a couple of questions. Does the well pump building structure encroach into the stream buffer?
I'm sorry, does
Well, that little well pump building?
right, the pump, that little pump station, they're not buildings, but that is in the buffer just a little bit.
Okay, so that is actually in the buffer.
Mm.
And just to be clear, this is just in the city buffer zone, not the state.
Correct.
The 25-foot state stream buffer is not disturbed at all.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Mike, you have, I think, a couple of conditions?
Yeah, so there was a little bit of discussion after the memo went out, and I'll pass these along. Sorry, I only have 5 copies. Yeah, pass them over. You can. I'll read them out loud. And actually, there's one more that after a little bit of discussion, I might propose as well. Just to tie them a little more closely to what's already in the plan. This is nothing in addition really to what's in the plan. One is that all disturbance within the buffer or setback. So this one's on timing. The first one's on timing. All disturbance within the buffer or setback shall be hydroseeded immediately upon completion of the adjacent grading work. That's just to stabilize it, so there's no risk of sediment or minimizing the risk of sediment flowing in toward the stream, to be followed with a permanent vegetation with native plantings, and we don't define that any particular kinds of plants except native. The second one is all mitigation members described in the application will be incorporated in the final design. And finally, the third one is that all additional stream buffer and impervious setback shown in the plan will be included in the final plat of the aging in place project. So just make sure that those the additional buffers and setbacks offered by the applicant make it onto the plat, which probably would have happened in addition. I will say that we have concurrently a first draft of the land disturbance permit plans, and the limits of disturbance shown are just a little bit looser than what's in the
That's in the plan that you have received.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And so what we'll be doing is staff comments on that. We'll just have them pull those limits of disturbance up to what gets approved here as part of the variance.
And I think, Wayne, you've talked with Wayne about
That's
that.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
I have a question. In the write-up, and thank you, and I think that makes sense, but there's in the discussion part of your assessment, there's a statement that you make: with the amount of property available in the district, it is difficult to view the buffer encroachments as unavoidable. And I'd like to ask you about that just a little bit, what your thinking there was. And then you go on to explain that just what you said is that because of the mitigation measures, because of the nature of it, you think it's minimal impact and still support it, but I want to make sure I understand what your statement was
Right.
about.
So that's actually an interesting point related to the sequencing of events that was presented here. They apparently had a design in place before they were asked to add this additional access for emergency services. And it's that additional, and apparently when that happened, they did not make adjustments to the underlying design of the aging in place center. And so again, just the thinking was, variances are often tied to size, shape, topography, some sort of limitation imposed by the property on the applicant. In this case, there's some open areas within the design. There's more land within the district. It just seemed difficult to say that another solution might not be able to be found. By the same token, the impact of what's proposed is minimal, and in fact might even end up not being negative once all the revegetation and the additional buffers are added.
Which I think is one of the reasons for these conditions, right?
Correct.
And I will say that I think I mentioned earlier, this is under a different chapter than the planning commission usually works. This is chapter 14, and we're usually under the zoning chapter.
That's correct.
I don't think we're restricted to that. I've taken a look at that, and I think that we do have jurisdiction there. But that being said, there are different criteria, different factors, different criteria for this particular variance than the ones we usually look at. And you've laid them out, and there are like 6 factors, but there are also a couple of threshold criteria.
Right.
In the variance proceeding in chapter 14 for these kind of variances. One is that it's supposed to be extreme hardship, and it's arguable, when I say it's arguable whether this is extreme hardship or whatever, but I think you've landed in a good place, at least from my standpoint. And I think because of the mitigation measures, because of the additional buffer areas on the other side of the stream, makes sense. It makes sense. And so, and because it's not involving state buffers.
Correct.
So, my position on is I think this makes sense. Was there any other discussion or questions about it? Christine? Patrick?
What will the primary function of the road be? Is it really for emergency vehicles only?
Like literally when you look at this plan, you can see how the first version of this. Didn't have this at all. Touch parking right here with no continuation, no anticipation of like a through road here. Cause it's not, like, we don't really want cars driving here. With the thought that a lot of this is gonna be paved, so you have a couple ways, but like you have a tremendous amount of access points that a fire truck could approach this whole compound.
So the crossroads,
Whole fire
the
hose
crossroads that connect to it are all paved, and that
as
remains.
a requirement of. Not us, but like this is us working with the fire department.
Will it have emergency vehicle signs only?
That's where I'm going.
I think they're showing bollards up there.
Yeah, so they end up with like golf carts on here.
Because it is a part of the path system too, right? I think the walking paths continue onto that same gravel road.
Yeah.
You don't want, now that we're putting it in, you don't want that much road for like. And cost just for, but we don't, it's like cars aren't gonna drive on it.
Okay, so this become a maintenance issue for you guys at some point.
Yeah.
Well, that was actually a comment that was that SEI made about the concrete apron there, turnaround apron. The comment, and I think I read it, was that if it weren't concrete, all the turnarounds there, it would erode and take constant maintenance.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of the comments they made. So
That's right.
I
And
think they were supportive of it too.
That's right. And that concrete is the only encroachment into the impervious setback. The only encroachment of impervious surface into the impervious setback, right?
And you are, if I heard correctly, the edge of disturbance that's shown on the plan is going to move to be consistent with whatever the city council approves.
That's correct.
But okay. So we have 3 new conditions. Did you get a chance to look at them? Do you have comments on them, or? I mean, I don't think they're intended to be any surprise or difference than the thoughts that are in your application that were presented in the application. So I think it may be appropriate to entertain a motion to make a recommendation that the city council approve this variance with these additional conditions, unless there's further discussion.
No, I'll be happy to make that motion that
Okay.
we approve it with conditions.
With these three conditions. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. That's the end of the public hearing. Let's move to the next item, which is new business, and it's the preliminary plat for Serenby lots 557 to 559. This is not a public hearing, so we're just going to discuss it, but to the extent there are questions about it for staff or what, Mike, it's probably helpful to introduce it.
Okay, sure. So lots 557 through 559 were previously platted as three fairly large lots. They run from Serenby Lane, which sneaks through both phase 2 and phase 3, up the hill to Lupo Loop, which is a much newer road. And the proposal is to re-subdivide that area into 10 separate lots. There are 20 new parking spaces, so 2 per lot, also proposed along the road, parallel spots along the road. And then there's a little bit of additional stormwater and wastewater infrastructure that would go into that area. But it's basically just to add a little bit of additional density where fewer larger lots were originally shown. And so this is in Motto East, so third phase, the southeastern portion of that arc, that omega.
And I think you explained that pretty clearly in staff's, oh, I'm sorry, what's the staff's recommendation?
No, staff recommends for approval. So, of course, the city's view always is that additional density provides the opportunity for additional preservation in other places. And so adding density is a positive in the way the city looks at these things. So staff recommends for approval.
Now, the previous plat, as is indicated here, showed 3. And what was the acreage of all 3? It was like 0.74 or something like that.
Read together, yeah, I would have to look it up.
Wasn't even a full acre.
Yeah, 0.74 for all 3.
And then this will be instead of 3, it's turning into 10
That's right.
lots.
Mhm.
And the 10 lots are smaller, like 0.07 to 0.112.
That's right.
Per acre.
Mhm.
And it looks like they're consistent with the other units that are immediately adjacent to it. Is that right?
Which you can see on this site plan. So, to Mike's point, the 3 becomes 10 on no additional land.
So we're not entitling any additional land that was anticipated to be green space, like the lot lines of the 3 remain the same boundary for now the 10. And 1 lot is adding. So the 3 lines used to like run from here to here. So we're changing a 3 frontage on Lupo Loop to 4, if you will, right? So the width of what's now shown as 557 to 560 used to be 557 to 559. Anticipated that like parking would be up here for 557 to 559. So now you'll have 4 front doors instead of 3 on Lupo Loop. And you'll have 6 front doors on Serenby Lane. The 4 front doors on Lupo Loop continue like the same pattern of the 9 cottages that are next to them. So that pattern continues. And then these 6 front doors will match and know the 11 front doors to the right of them, 6 of which are already built and 5 are coming. So you'll have a continuation. And as Mike said, this is kind of the exact elegance of Chat Hill zoning. Like to do this, we have to now save 7 additional acres and disturb no additional land that the 3 were on.
I don't think this is material, but isn't there like an extra 7 feet or something on the north end?
On one end, yeah, it overlaps just a little bit, but it's
It's not
yeah,
material. but
that was just some interstitial space between the sets of lots.
Right.
Probably not ever planned to be open space because I don't think any of that in there is going to be open space.
Right.
So all of it would have been.
Well, it looks that way to me. I just wanted to, for the record, I wanted to be clear. And below it, the next set of lots, is there a next set of lots?
There's
You have 1 lot.
there's several.
You have below it, because above is here. So you have 1 house that's existing on 474. and then you have a lot that's 480, and then you have green space past 3.
That's right. There's green space to the west.
That's right, across the street, right, across the street is Green Day, is a big retaining wall that drops off on the other side of that,
Mike, you characterize as open space. Is that what it's intended to be?
which
To the west,
across Serenby Lane.
what we're talking,
Yeah,
calling
I-
green space, that's open space.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, yeah, so there's a potential,
Site that exists like in the middle of that.
No, I just was asking. I wasn't.
it's been on the map as a potential spa for a long time, right? But a lot of that is open space immediately adjacent. Yeah.
Well, it seems consistent with, well, that's the standard, isn't it? We need to be consistent with the previous, what's been approved so far.
Yeah, yes, that's a part of the standard. If it's matches sufficiently with the concept plan, and that's.
You have it in here. I'll go ahead and read it. So the standard, the basis for the planning commission's action on a preliminary plat like this shall be whether the preliminary plat is consistent with the approved concept plan. And that's the 3 was the approved concept plan.
The 3 is actually a plat. Those lots were platted,
They
so
were
it
platted,
made it
weren't they?
through the
Yeah.
whole process
Yeah,
to
okay.
platting. They're available for sale right now.
And whether it meets the purpose and requirements of the UDC and all other ordinances, and as well as the comprehensive plan and a couple other plans. So I think you're right. I mean, density is
That's right.
what the city's going for.
That's right. If you look at the
in
concept plan, you'll
hamlets.
notice that there is density throughout Motto that's quite a bit more dense than what's shown on the concept plan. But it was, again, sufficiently consistent with the concept plan. The overall shape
Yeah.
is right.
Right. I have no other questions. Do you?
No, but in concept, just question. It's not really material. I'm just curious. If someone were to come and buy 3 lots in Serenbe and approach us to do this that weren't Serenbe development, would they?
They would need, well, they would need the development rights. They would probably be.
So an owner cannot. So
I'm just curious.
Per city zoning, and I know because we've been not through this, but had someone like ask the question in an
Same thing
earnest
you
way.
asked.
You cannot land an additional development right and create a subdivision unless you are the original developer and titler. So like someone can't buy a lot in Serenbe, go purchase a development right in Chat Hills and subdivide it. That's not something that can happen. They could apply to do it.
I hope you are
Yeah, I think
putting that in the
that's
deeds.
right.
Because from the city's perspective, the only,
That's right.
I mean, it would be okay. The only question then is what you've done to, because there's an upper limit to the density, right? And so you are potentially removing that increment to get to that upper limit from the original developer. So there would be a cost to that. That's,
But let's say there was a site in Serenbe that was to be developed as condos. And I don't know how the development rights are set forward or how many units you could say, but if the developer came in and instead of building 40, he built 45, how does?
So we in a multifamily situation, we sell someone a piece of land with a set number of rights and then a determined per unit price to increase over 40. So like the textile loft building was sold with the ability to build 24 doors and then had a predetermined price to go to 20, a per unit price to go over that. So that if they had wanted to change 2 to 1, like the 2 bedrooms to 2 1-bedrooms, they would have had to pay for an additional development right. This will be intriguing, probably less for Serenbe and more for like the last developer 30 to 40 years from now, when the city only has 100 development rights left.
it's an interesting question. Once the master developer is off the scene, right? You've sold out, you're done as a master developer, how the city would respond to an application at that point.
Of subdivision, right?
Good. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Then I think it's probably time for a motion to recommend to the city approval of the application for Serenbe Motto East lots 557 to 559. I'm making that motion. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. So I think that leaves us with there's no other new business, staff reports. Mike, I think that's you.
Yeah, the only thing I have is I brought again the building permit numbers, which have been available online since the beginning of the month, but in April of this year, we issued 15 total building permits versus 20 the year before. But of those 15, 8 of them were new dwellings, mix of townhomes and single family. Whereas a year ago, only 3 out of the 20 were more inspections, overall 250 versus 171, few less COs. That's about all I have. I've been saying for a while that we're on the cusp of issuing some land disturbance permits for several developments. Bear Creek on Wilkerson Mill Road, I think very, very soon, within. Anyway, we have a meeting on site with them the beginning of the week next week, and the permit may follow pretty immediately after that. Series right across from Serenby. They're still a few months out, but we're wrapping up the process. And then I have inquiries and plans from phase 2 of the Estates at Cedar Grove. And they're wrestling, as are some other folks, with Department of Watershed Management and some of their requirements. So, but that'll probably happen fairly soon. And I was told recently that the Creative Land Co. project up at Cochrane Mill and Cedar Grove is interested in coming in soon. They'll have to get a preliminary plat for their first phase, but talk to their land planner, who is talking about beginning to engage and engineer to get the land disturbance permit plans ready for them. So we'll be hearing more from them soon too.
Well, Mike, if you're going to take a vacation, you better hurry. Before we adjourn then, I'd like to welcome Ms. White. Very nice that you're going to be assisting and working with us on this, and looking forward to it.
Thank you.
And we will miss you, Ms. Witcher. But you'll be close, so we can come yell at you if we need to. Of course not. Anyway, thank you, and appreciate you joining us and helping us. And this will be the easiest one of these you'll ever attend. I predict.
That is true.
So without anything further, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much.
We get a motion. and
Oh,
a
I'm
second.
sorry. I didn't. We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye.
All right.
The motion carries and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very
Hey,
much.
you're gonna have to keep coming.
I get so excited at the end.